Have you ever wondered what would happen if China, one of the world's biggest economic powers, stopped using the US dollar? Well, this is no longer just a theory. It's happening right now. And the consequences might be far bigger than you think. Higher interest rates, a hit to consumer spending, and shifts in global trade. In this video, you'll understand why China's decision could have a direct impact on your wallet. Like, comment, and share this video. And subscribe so you don't miss out on content that could transform your financial life. In recent years, China has been taking increasingly bold steps to reduce its dependence on the US dollar. But recently, those steps have turned into leaps. The People's Bank of China has officially recommended that domestic banks avoid buying US dollars. This isn't just a financial suggestion. It's a geopolitical move. By selling off its dollar reserves, the Chinese government is making a strategic choice. It aims to reduce exposure to currency risk while also weakening the dollar's influence in global trade. This shift gained momentum after the U.S. imposed trade tariffs on China during the 2018 trade war. Since then, China has been actively seeking alternatives to the dollar, including bilateral agreements with other countries using local currencies, and increasing the use of the yuan in international trade. Why does this matter to you? Because the US dollar is still the most widely used currency in global trade. When a major player like China begins to step away from it, the ripple effects are felt worldwide. That means this decision could indirectly affect the price of goods, investments, interest rates, and even the value of your money. China is the second largest holder of US government debt, the well-known treasuries, behind only Japan. This gives China significant leverage over U.S. fiscal stability, since a big part of the U.S. government's financing depends on foreign investors like China. In other words, China holds a major share of America's debt. But what happens if China starts selling off those treasuries in large, strategic amounts? First, treasury yields go up. That might sound good for investors, but it comes with a concerning side effect. It raises the cost of the U.S. to borrow money. As a result, the Federal Reserve might be forced to increase interest rates. This is an attempt to make U.S. bonds more appealing, especially as major buyers like China start pulling back. And what does that mean in practice? Higher interest rates for mortgages, credit cards, student loans, and auto financing become the new norm. In short, everything gets more expensive for the American consumer. And since the U.S. is the world's largest economy, the effects don't stop there. Countries with currencies tied to the dollar also feel the squeeze. Credit becomes more expensive and harder to access, affecting businesses too. That leads to lower investments, job cuts, and project delays, a chain reaction of consequences. The cycle is clear: economic pressure, rising unemployment, and a slowdown in consumer spending. A single move from China can, in fact, put the U.S. economic engine in slow motion. The Federal Reserve's response to this scenario has been direct. Caution is needed. In its latest projections, the Fed warned there's a 44% chance that unemployment will rise in the next 12 months. And that's not all. Inflation, which has already caused plenty of concern in recent years, could rise again. New estimates suggest inflation could hit 5% in 2025, raising alarms for families and businesses alike. Faced with these risks, the U.S. government is considering stimulating the economy, but the tools it has available, though familiar, come with dangerous side effects. Cutting interest rates, for example, can further devalue the dollar. That boosts short-term spending, but weakens the currency's position on the global stage. Quantitative easing, essentially printing more money, could fuel even more inflation if overused. This strategy has been used before with mixed results, and excessive use could destabilize markets. Here's the trap. In trying to counter the effects of China's decisions, the U.S. could end up making its own economic indicators worse. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline, a quick fix that might cause an even bigger problem later. A trial and error cycle with real-world consequences. Whether it's at the grocery store, on your mortgage, or at your job, everyone feels the effects of this instability. One of the clearest signs of China's recent moves can be seen in financial market charts. The behavior of U.S. Treasury bonds has raised red flags on Wall Street and among global economists. Treasury yields have jumped at the fastest pace since 2001. This sharp rise lines up with concentrated selling during Asian market hours. That suggests China is acting with both strategy and timing. This isn't a random sell-off. It's a calculated move designed to make waves and send a message, a targeted sale meant to provoke a reaction and maximize its impact on global markets. The goal is clear: show that China has financial tools it can use in response to political and economic pressure from the U.S. And here's the concern. When major buyers of U.S. debt lose interest, the cost of government borrowing goes up. That's not a quick fix. It demands deep changes to U.S. fiscal policy. And since the Treasury still needs to raise money, the burden is passed along to everyone: banks, businesses, and citizens. The result? Economic pressure, lower consumer spending, and declining confidence. The U.S.-China trade war brought about some unexpected effects. One of them was the creativity of Chinese suppliers in finding ways around tariffs to keep selling to American consumers. How? By offering products directly online at extremely low prices with promises of fast delivery. Global platforms became showcases for products that dodge U.S. taxes and import duties. In many cases, these suppliers claim to be partners or even manufacturers of well-known brands like Nike or Lululemon. That raises suspicion, but also attracts price-sensitive buyers who care more about the deal than the origin. While not all of these claims can be verified, the fact is that they're gaining ground with consumers looking for savings and variety. Meanwhile, traditional American retailers are left facing aggressive and often unfair competition. What's behind all this? A clear attempt to counter the effects of tariffs and keep trade flowing, even if it means operating on the fringes of traditional regulations. This new global trade model, digital, decentralized, and fast-moving, poses a real challenge to U.S. protectionist strategies, and it shows just how far China is willing to go to stay influential in global consumer markets. In a recent press conference, the U.S. Treasury Secretary used an analogy that got people's attention. If you owe the bank a little, the bank has power. If you owe the bank a lot, you have power over the bank. At first glance, it sounds simple, but the message is powerful. The United States owes trillions of dollars to China, and according to her, that gives the U.S. more leverage, not China. Why? Because if the U.S. stops paying, the bigger loser would be the creditor, in this case, China. A default by the world's largest economy would cause a global collapse. The shock waves would quickly spread and hurt China itself. This is a relationship of forced interdependence, where neither side can act with complete freedom. Both countries are tied to an economic link that requires balance and caution. This metaphor shows how financial geopolitics doesn't follow the same rules as everyday finance. In the world of big numbers, the more debt you hold, the more bargaining power you might actually have. But that doesn't mean the risks have vanished. The tension is still there. The game has just become more complex and less visible. While it's selling off dollars in U.S. treasuries, China is buying up gold, and not just a little. We're talking about a steady and significant increase. For 5 months in a row, China's central bank has made major gold purchases. These aren't random moves. They're part of a coordinated strategy to diversify reserves. What's behind this? One word: security. Gold is a timeless store of value, immune to sanctions, currency swings, and aggressive monetary policies. By buying gold, China is protecting its international reserves, strengthening the yuan with a more solid foundation, reducing exposure to the U.S. dollar. This strategy echoes ancient times, when empires measured their power by how much gold they held. Now, in the 21st century, gold is once again at the center of the global geopolitical chessboard. And the country doing the stockpiling isn't just any player. It's the world's second largest economy, and it's made it clear it wants to play by its own rules. China is rewriting the rules of the global financial game, and the U.S. dollar, long seen as untouchable, is now facing real resistance. We've seen how the sale of U.S. debt, the buildup of gold, and new trade strategies all point to a coordinated move to shift the balance of economic power. These changes affect all of us, directly or indirectly. If interest rates go up in the U.S., global consumption feels it. If the dollar weakens, currencies and markets around the world react. It's time to stay alert and get prepared. Like this video. Share what stood out to you in the comments. Send it to someone who needs to understand what's going on. And don't forget to subscribe so you can keep learning how to protect and grow your money. See you in the next video.